I don't know if you know this, but grief after miscarriage is not correlated to the number of weeks that you were pregnant. As humans, we have this innate need to compare, and it's perfectly normal. It's actually how we organize and make sense of the world. But when it comes to loss, it doesn't really work, and it doesn't serve you to compare yourself to other people's losses. Let me explain that. So, when I had my first miscarriage, a colleague of mine had just had a miscarriage at 14 weeks. So she had her miscarriage a few weeks before me. And I was 11 weeks pregnant when I lost my baby, my first one anyway. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, it must be worse to have gotten past the first trimester and then lose the baby. I think I would feel so much worse. And then I had a friend who lost her baby at 20 weeks, and my comparison went on. I thought, gosh, it must be way worse to have a loss at 20 weeks. I should be thankful that mine happened early. And it went the other way too. I remember thinking, oh, someone who lost a baby at 6 weeks would be so much better off than me at 11. And I found myself comparing my grief to others as though it could be neatly lined up on this kind of continuum. And it really can't. And I'm wondering whether you've also caught yourself playing this comparison game if you've tried to line up your grief on a sort of continuum. If you have, I want you to know that comparing your grief to someone else's at different weeks of gestation is kind of the same thing as trying to compare grief after losing a living child. Would you say that losing a child at 5 years old is worse than losing your child who's 10 years old? Or is losing your child at 10 years old worse than losing a 20-year-old? Of course not. We would never say something like that or even think that. So, why do we do it when it comes to pregnancy loss? I think it really has to do with that trying to organize our world and trying to make ourselves feel better by thinking that someone who had their loss later than I did somehow makes us feel better. So let's get into the factors that actually do influence how you feel after a loss. I'm going to tell you about 5 of them. I'm sure there's others. Sorry, I have 4 of them. So number one of the factors that influences how you feel is your beliefs about pregnancy. So if you feel that the embryo inside of you is just a bunch of cells versus whether you believe that it's a baby with a soul, that's, I think, obvious that that's going to influence how you feel about your loss. Whether you've had other losses is going to influence how you feel. So if you've had other pregnancy losses, or if you've had other types of loss in your life, be it the loss of a pet or the loss of a family member or a friend, even other types of losses, if you haven't healed from those losses, then that can also impact how you feel about your pregnancy loss now. Whether you have the tools and practices to help you manage your grief. So if you don't have any practices or tools in place that you can call upon to help you manage your emotions and manage your recovery after grief, then you're going to suffer more than someone who has those in place. And the 4th one, if you have people in your life who are willing and able to sit with you in your pain. And what I mean by that is if you have someone who is willing to not try to make you feel better by saying things like, at least it was early, right? At least you know you can get pregnant, all those types of things. If you have someone who is willing to just listen to how you're feeling, validate your feelings, that's going to help you more than someone who's not able to do that. So those are the four. Let's just recap. Your beliefs about pregnancy and the baby inside you are going to impact how you feel, whether or not you've had other losses and whether you've healed from those other losses, whether you have the tools and practices in place to help you heal emotionally after your loss, and if you have people in your life who are willing to truly validate your feelings. Those are the four things that, I know there's others, but those are four that are going to impact how you feel after your loss. So now that you know that your grief is just as valid as someone who had a loss later on in pregnancy, or as someone who had their loss earlier in pregnancy than you did, what do you plan on doing about the grief that you do feel? So if you'd like to take some action and accelerate your emotional healing, there are two ways that I can help you. You can join my Facebook group at Miscarriage, Love and Loss, or you can do both if you like. Download my free PDF. It's called The Roadmap to Navigate Grief After a Miscarriage, and the link is just above this video. That's it for today. Bye for now.